Good morning. Last class we have discussed about cryptography and network security terminologies. In that we have seen what is a security and what is security triad. Next, what is the definition of threat and attack, and OS architecture, definition of security attack, security mechanism, security service. Today's class I'll discuss security attacks. So security attacks are classified into two types. Security attacks are classified into two types. One is passive attack, another one is active attack. So passive attack means it won't affect system resources. Passive attack, we don't know attack is happening on the system. Information, someone is learning the information. Third party, they'll observe the information. They learn the information. They'll use the information, but they doesn't affect the system resources. So it's very difficult to detect passive attack. So passive attack attempts to learn or information or make use of information, but does not cause any harm to the system resources. Another example attack is active attack. An active attack attempts to alter system resources. Active attack attempts to alter system resources or affect their operation. So active attack means if attack happened, we'll identify the attack happened because it will cause harm to the system resources. So it may alter the system resources or it affect the operation, how it performs. It won't perform the intended operation. The system, once the attack happened, the system won't perform its operations. It behaves differently. So attacks are classified into two types. One is passive attack. Second one is active attacks. We'll see what are the different types of passive attacks. So passive attacks, we have two types of passive attacks are there. One is release of message content. Second one is traffic analysis. So passive attack is nothing but it's a nature of eavesdropping, the information leakage and monitoring the transmission. When two hosts are communicating, that communication message or email content is leaked, release of contents. The third person can read the content. That is the eavesdropping. Then that is release of message content. So if we use the some encryption technique, if they read the info, if, when two hosts are communicating, if they read the message, we can add the encryption to that message such that they can't read. If they get the message also, they could not decrypt the message. So that we'll see traffic analysis. Passive attacks are nothing but two kinds of passive attacks. One is release of message content, traffic analysis. So here in passive attacks, the opponent, the third party, he wants to read the information. He wants to get the information that is being transmitted between the two hosts. So we'll see what is release of message content. Here the Bob is communicating with the allies. Third person is reading the message. Here white tapping is there. They are reading the contents of the message sent by Bob to allies. So here the release of message content, it can be a telephone conversation or it can be a electronic mail. So here passive attacks, we don't know the attack is happened because they learn the information, they'll use the information. They won't affect the communication. They don't know someone is listening their communication. This is the release of message content. So here we would like to prevent an opponent from learning the content. They are communicating that through that communication, the information someone is learning. So we have to prevent the leakage of information. So here release of message content we can prevent. If they tap the message and if they get the message also, they should not able to read the message content. For that we can add the encryption to the data whatever you are transmitting. So whenever Bob is sending message to allies, they won't send it as a plain text. They will use some encryption. So the message will be in the coded form. If the third person get the message also, they couldn't read. So second type is traffic analysis. So we already seen release of message content. In that the opponent, if they get the message, they should not in a position to read the content. So for that we are adding a encryption. We are masking the message. So by masking the contents of message, so we can prevent the attacker to get the information. If they get the message also, they should not in a position to understand the message. We will do it by masking. So even if they capture the message also, they could not extract the information from the message. So they could not extract, but what they can get by observing the pattern, they can get by observing the pattern. You see here, when Bob is communicating with Alice, they are getting the message, but they couldn't decrypt the message. They couldn't understand the message, but they can view the transmission, how many times they are communicating, how much time they are communicating. That is the transmission length, a packet size, the time, and everything, the details they will get. So here, if we had encryption protection in place, the opponent will able to learn the information, which type of information they learn, the pattern of this message, the pattern of the message. So which kind of the pattern they learn. So location and identity of communicating host, location and identity of communication host, from which place they are communicating, source location and destination location, and identity, who, which host id is communicating with which host id. So if we encrypt the message content, they'll, they can't get the information, but they observing the transmission. Here you see here, here he's observing the transmission. They know from which place he is communicating, from which place he is communicating, and how many times they are communicating, and who is communicating. So they don't know the data, but they are observing the pattern of the messages, from which place, location, and identity of the host. So here, if you use the masking also, you can prevent the opponent from learning the message, but you can't stop from learning the message, but you can get some pattern of the message. So which kind of message they will get means location and identity of host, and at the same time they know how many times they are communicating, frequency and length of the message. So they could observe the frequency and length of the messages exchanged between the two communicating hosts. So in traffic analysis, the opponent will identify the location, identity of communicating host, at the same time the message, how many frequency and length of the messages. So here passive attacks are very difficult to detect, because they're learning the information, they are not affecting the system. Until unless they do something, they don't know, the communicating parties, they don't know someone is their message was leaked. So it is very difficult to detect. Here the passive attacks are very difficult to detect, because they don't involve any alteration of data, just they are observing the information, but they are not doing any modification to the data. So passive attacks are very difficult to detect. The second kind of attack is active attacks. So active attacks, see here. So active attacks involve, what is active attacks? Active attacks involves modification of data stream. What, when the two hosts are communicating, the data stream will be modified in with the transmission. So these are the four main kinds of categories of active attacks: masquerade, replay, modification of messages, and denial of service. Masquerade, replay, modification of messages, and denial of service. Masquerade. So fake identity, using fake identity, gaining access to the information, using fake identity, gaining access to the information. So our mail ID and password, if they know, anyone can access using our OTP. So fake person is accessing the your personal information using your credentials. That is masquerade. You are not initiated any mail, but using your credential from your mail they are sending. So that is a masquerade attack. So authentication sequences can be captured. So what are the credential needed to log in the system? They are capturing that information, and they use that information at valid time, and the attack will be take place. Once they know the login credential, they can attack. This is a masquerade attack. So you see here, Bob is not initiated any communication. Using Bob credentials, Darth is communicating. Here Alice feels Bob is communicating. So fake identity. Darth is communicating with the Alice, but with the name of Bob. Bob credentials they are using. So Alice feel the information is from Bob. So Bob not initiated any mail. From Bob mail ID, they are sending mail. That is masquerade. So here active attack means modification of data stream. Four categories of active attacks are: one, masquerade; two, replay. So what is replay? See here, replay. Bob is sending message. Here Darth is capturing and capture the message from Bob to Alice. Later he play message to Alice. So here Bob is sending message to Alice, but it is not directly gone to the Alice. From Bob to it reached the Darth. Darth they will again send the message to the replay the message to Alice. So here, so replay involves passive capture of data unit and its subsequent transmission. So replay what they are doing here in replay, capturing the data from the Bob, and after few minutes later they are resending the data. That is replay. What is the third one? Modification of the message. So from the Bob message is reached to the Dot. Some part of the message will be changed and sent to the Alice. That is modification of the message. Fourth category is the denial of service. So here there is no communication is failed between the client to the server. So attacker will disrupt the communications. Then they will know attack happened. Here also message is modified. They will know attack is happened. Here also replay has done. Then also they will know the attack is happened. Here Bob not initiated mail, but Alice is getting mails means they know something attack is happened. So what is replay? Replay involves capturing of data in it and it's a subsequent transmission. So data from Bob to Alice not reached directly from Bob to Dart, from their Dart to Alice is reached. That is subsequent retransmission to produce an unauthorized effect. Next, modification. Modification of messages simply means the some portion of valid message. Example, you see, the Bob is sending, allow John Smith to read confidential file accounts. Allow John Smith to read confidential file. This is modified by Dart like allow John Smith place, they'll use the Fred Brown name. So instead of allowing John Smith, they'll allow the Fred Brown to read the confidential file. So modification of message simply means some portion of the valid message is altered. So denial of service is the fourth category. What is denial of service? Normal use of management or communication facilities, they will be affected. So you can't access the server, you don't get the you can't get the services of the system. So this attack may have specific target. This attack, denial of service attack may have a specific target. For example, an entity may suppress all messages directed to a particular destination. So they will attack the communications provided to a particular host. So here may suppress all messages directed to a particular destination. Or another form, service denial is the disruption of entire network. Communication is disrupted, communication is fails. How they fail the communication? By disabling the network or overloading with the messages, overloading a dummy messages so as to degrade the performance. These are the four kinds of the active attacks. One is you have already seen, masquerade, using fake identity, getting the access to the information. Darth is using the identity of Bob. Next one is replay. Bob message was stopped and a subsequent transmitted by Darth. Next one is the modification of message. The original message is some part of original message or some part of the message was changed and retransmitted. Denial of service. So communication is failed between Bob to the server. In the name of Bob, he is getting the service. So these are the four kinds of active attacks. Thank you. Next class, we'll see the CNS, cryptographic network system architecture.